Right, everyone, welcome I think this is the first alcohol-free beer tasting at a pub event. Just to give you a bit of introduction on who we are, we're Club Soda, we're a mindful drinking movement. We run the mindful drinking festivals every year. We've got a pub guide and drinks guide, which you've got details of on your table. And we've had some research funding from the Brewers Research and Education Fund to look at how to improve sales of low and no beer. It's an exciting category, not just exciting, but actually turning into the biggest growth category in drinks. I'm going to need to put the microphone a bit closer. And so what we're bringing to you today is some of the best alcohol-free beers on the market. And I've got Jane Peyton, who's going to take you through a tasting of 4 of those beers today. And the first one is now coming out. And I'm going to introduce to you Jane.
Hi everybody, my name's Jane Peyton. I'm an accredited beer sommelier with the Beer and Cider Academy, just next door. Excellent training. I'm also a sommelier, which is a cider sommelier, and a drinks educator. I do drink alcohol, but I've been working recently with Club Soda, and it's like being St. Paul on the way to Damascus. I've had this what did he have? Thank you, a lightning moment. Obviously, I'm not St. Paul, but I had a lightning moment when I started tasting these really great beers. Beer really has it when it comes to low and no alcohol, because it's got little tricks that it can use, which other alcoholic drinks can't. So what beer does, it can really bring those beery flavours forward and make you think you really are drinking beer and not missing anything. So you're not missing the alcohol, even though there's no alcohol there. You're still getting flavours. So today we're going to taste 4 different beers, and we're going to start with one of the beers that people who love malt will really enjoy. So a malty beer. This is a brand, St. Peter's, and they were one of the first ale brewers to start doing low and no alcohol beers. So we're drinking gold without gold. Look at the lovely, I love this shaped bottle. I do drink their alcohol beers as well, particularly in their Jerusalem Tavern, which is in Clerkenwell, fantastic pub. And so what we're going to do, like any tasting that we do, we're going to look at the colour of the beer in the glass. We're going to get our eyes all, yeah, that looks like beer, doesn't it? And then we're going to swirl it round in the glass and release the aromas. Now, the brain registers most flavour through the nose, so it's really important that we smell what we're drinking. You can do that actively smelling it, or you can just do it when it goes into your mouth. That's called orthonasal tasting. So what happens is that the aromas go from your food or your drink up through your nose, the cavity of your nose, and they dissolve in all these olfactory cells. And then a few seconds later, the brain goes, oh, that tastes like honey or lemon or chocolate or strawberries or coffee, all those sorts of things. The tongue is very crude when it comes to actually tasting anything. It doesn't taste anything. It doesn't register flavour, it registers tastes. So sweet, bitter, sour, salty, and umami, which is a savoury flavour. So we've got the beer in our glass there. We'll swirl it round, stick your nose in it, and that has a very, very big cereal smell to it. Can anybody else get that real cereal malty smell there? Malt bread. Now, malt bread, the reason it's called malt bread is because it has malt in it, and that's the main ingredient of beer, apart from water. So beer is made of water, malted barley or other malted cereals, yeast and hops. And all those ingredients give flavour to the beer. Alcohol gives flavour to the beer as well. So a beer that has no alcohol in it, you're taking away a big constituent of the flavour of that beer. Now, there's different ways of getting the alcohol out of the beer, and I'll talk about that a little later on, but let's just taste this beer. So it's got a very malty base to it. You get some hop bitterness coming through. Very gentle, very easy drinking beer, that is. The finish, it's got that bitter finish, quite a quick finish, that is. In beer tasting, they often call that the hang, and it means how long the flavour stays around on the tongue before it dissipates. So that's got quite a long finish, actually, to it, hasn't it? So all the beers that I've had from St. Peter's, all the without, have been very malty. Now, we're going to have a couple of beers next that are very much driven by hops. So if you still have some in your glass, you can then compare a very hoppy beer with one that's got a lot of malt character to it. Has anybody ever been out to St. Peter's? They have a brewery in Bungay in Suffolk. And is there anybody here from St. Peter's, by the way? Any brand representatives? Okay. They have a beautiful brewery out in the countryside in Suffolk, and it's an old nunnery. And you get that feeling that it was a religious place, and now it's a religious place about beer now. And they do actually brew alcohol beers, but most of their output now is no alcohol beers. They've got a listing in one of the supermarkets, or a couple of them, and they're just about to start going draft in some pubs, which is the holy grail for low and no alcohol brewers. Because for a pub to dedicate a line, a draft line, that's a lot of commitment, because they could be selling other beers on that line. So they are committed, and it's a really big growing sector, which Laura might explain a little later if you want to hear about how the no and low sector is growing. So we're going to go into our next beer now, Ghost Ship from Adnams, another Suffolk brewery. And you'll know Ghost Ship probably, if you do drink alcohol, then you'll know Ghost Ship already, because Ghost Ship is an alcohol beer as well. I think it's 4.3 when it's alcohol. So to make Ghost Ship 0.5, by the way, the first one that we had, the St. Peter's without, is 0.0. So it has 0 alcohol, so that can be classified as no alcohol, whereas, oh, thank you, Tom, whereas a beer like Ghost Ship by Adnams, 0.5 is classified as low alcohol. Now, to put that into, hello, how are you? We've met before, haven't we? We'll talk later. Thank you. You are so Debbie. Am I Paul? Yeah. I'm Paul, and she's Debbie. She's really good at dancing as well. She's been on Strictly, Debbie has, don't you know? So what Ghost Ship do, what Adnams do, they actually make the Ghost Ship as though it's going to be the 4.3 full alcohol version, and then they distill it, they vacuum distill it, and that's how they get the alcohol out of it. And what that does, that wonderful, oh no, you're filtered, aren't you, at Ghost Ship? Filtered, you've got that amazing filter. I'm ever so sorry, I'm getting my vacuum distillation and my fantastic high-tech filtration mixed up. Spent a load of money on your excellent filtration, which takes the alcohol out of the beer but leaves all that lovely flavour. Now, this beer, Ghost Ship, is led by hops. So stick your nose in there, and what do you smell? To me, that smells like India Pale Ale, an American craft beer, an American Pale Ale, one of the wonderful craft beers that so many British breweries are doing. Big aromatics on the nose, lots of citrus there, some toffee coming through as well. And then taste it. So you get that bitterness as well. You get a bit of juiciness coming through. I'm getting that juicy side. Some acidity as well, actually, on the side of my tongue there. Now, what I've been doing recently, if I'm drinking at home, I'll have a beer with alcohol, and then I'll go and have, and it's usually been Ghost Ship, actually. I've gone into a Ghost Ship 0.5, and then I've gone to an alcohol, and then I've gone and stayed for the rest of the evening on no alcohol. So what that does, your brain has already said, oh, you're drinking beer. So even though there's no alcohol in that beer, I still think I'm drinking beer. And it's great. And I think...
I've heard that some people have been doing Ghost Ship shandies with half alcoholic Ghost Ship and half alcohol-free Ghost Ship, which is another top tip. Or doing the first 2 drinks alcohol-free with an alcohol-free beer, so they can see if the company's good enough to drink for the evening. Which, bearing in mind, we do often drink to stay with people that we're not enjoying time with. So starting with 2 alcohol-free is also a really good idea. But I think this is one of the only beers you could do a Ghost Ship. You could do a shandy with its full-strength version.
Because you can do that with London Pride and Golden Pride. So Fuller's London Pride, 4.3, and then Golden Pride, 8.5. So Golden Pride is the grandma of London Pride, basically. But people do that. They'll go a little London, a little Golden. Sometimes they actually mix them. But shandy, Ghost Ship shandy, you could do that with the next one that we're going to have as well, because they do a full alcohol version, and a zero version. So you could do shandies or radlers, as they call them in continental Europe. So Ghost Ship, you could describe that as a golden ale, but to me that's a pale ale. So, but it's up to you how you describe things. You know, I mean, beer styles are there as a guide, so people know what they're asking for or what they're shopping for. You know, if you know the style that you like and you see that written on a label on a bottle or a can or in a pub, then you know that you like that style. So that's a pale ale, golden ale, I would say.
And a lot of people ask about alcohol-free on tap, and this has gone into at least 150 venues now on tap. So we're beginning to see the emergence of being able to have a pint of alcohol-free beer as well, and I'm sure there's plenty more of those to come.
I think also with the no and low alcohol beers in particular, because of the way the legal measures that we have to drink for draft beer, it's half pints, pints, or increments of pints. And if you're with your mates and they're drinking alcohol and you don't want to drink alcohol, it's really hard to find something that looks like what they're drinking. Because if you're in a gang, you don't want to be the one person who's drinking the Coke or the pop, if they're all drinking beer. So if we can now get the low and no alcohol beers on draft, then your mates might be drinking a half or a pint, and you can also drink a half and a pint, but it just happens to be no or low alcohol. So this is a really good thing, particularly for men. I was at a seminar that Laura and UC organised, and one of the barriers for drinking no and low alcohol for men is the fact that, to this point, it's in bottles. So if they're with the friends and they don't want the friends to know that they're not drinking alcohol, then pouring something from a bottle into a glass gives this sign that they're actually not with the other ones. And, you know, there's a lot of, even now in this country, there's oh, go on, have a drink. People force you to have a drink. And they say, oh, don't be such a girl. Well, actually, there's nothing wrong with girls, because I am one. So, you know, but some men say, don't be such a girl, as though it's a bad thing to be. So, you know, there's this pressure, and for men in particular, that pressure is there. So the more draft that we can get into pubs for low and no alcohol, the better it's going to be. And I'd be really happy with that as well, because then you can make your night out even longer, can't you? Because if you're drinking a strong alcohol beer, if you're on a craft beer that's 6 or 7%, you can only have 1 or 2 before you're sliding down your chair, really. On the floor, exactly. Now, the third beer we're going to have is Sweden's biggest selling low alcohol beer. But it's also the biggest selling IPA in Sweden as well. And it's called Ship Full of IPA, which is actually made by Brutal Brewery, or Brutal Brewing. You may know Piston Head, which is one of their brands as well in the UK. That's been in the UK for a while. So this is the biggest selling IPA with alcohol in Sweden. So this version, which is 0 alcohol, it's 0.0, is the same brew, but it has the vacuum distillation. So the alcohol has been removed by distilling it in a vacuum, leaves all that flavour behind. This is dry hopped. The other one, Ghost Ship, is dry hopped as well. What that means is that during the brewing process, you throw in your hops at every point that you can do throughout the process. So the first point you would do that is boiling. That's not dry hopping. The dry hopping comes when you're adding dry hops or dry flower hops into, thank you, Debbie, into the fermenting tank, the maturation tank, even into the cask, sometimes the keg. So dry hopping, dry hop with loads of American hops, this one is. And I would say this has got a little bit of a darker malt, maybe a crystal or is it caramalt? So there's a malt in here called caramalt, which gives you a little toffee and caramel sort of flavour, but it also gives you the colour. So the colour of beer comes from the colour of the malted barley that you use to brew. So the first two that we had, you can see how pale they are. The first one in particular, very pale malts in that one. And then you compare the colours of this, and that's more of a copper colour, isn't it? Now, you should be able to smell some toffee on the nose with this one. Yes, it's there. And you get it on the palate as well. You get quite a distinct toffee character. Loads of hops in there. Now, if you didn't know that wasn't a beer with alcohol in it, I don't think you would know, if that makes sense. You know, it's blooming good. That's a really great beer for this style and for people who want a big flavoured beer and love IPAs and love craft beers. That's a good option to have. So, yes. Yes, I got the name wrong earlier because I was thinking of a song in my head. I was singing that song. It's Ship Full of IPA. Ship Full of IPA, and the brewery is Brutal Brewing, and it's been launched at Craft Beer Rising, isn't it, Steve? So if anybody's going to Craft Beer Rising at the end of February in the Old Truman Brewery, then they'll be there with the full alcohol beers as well, and this one. So it's launching in the UK. So you're having a preview. You're the first to have it. Yes. Yeah. Filling up the glasses for the... Am I talking too quickly? Right, let's just talk about the ingredients and what they bring to the beer. So water, biggest ingredient in beer. Beer is up to 95% water. I know, a bit of a shocker, isn't it, when you think of what it costs in the pub? Most of that is tax, by the way. You know, the majority of what you pay in a pub is tax. So beer is water. Now, the water isn't just water. So the mineral content of the water will determine the family of beers that your beer goes into. So if you're brewing lager beers, and lagers include Pilsners, Schwarzbiers, Dunkels, Bocks, Helles, all sorts of lager beers, the water is very light in mineral salts. It's almost as though the water's been distilled. Now, you can filter those mineral salts out, or if you're in an area where you have naturally low mineral salts in your water, then you can do that. For instance, in the town of Pilsen in the Czech Republic, where the Pilsner lager style was first brewed, and that was all to do with the water. Now, if you're brewing ales, and we've been drinking ales today, so ale water is full of mineral salts, and what that does, it adds to the body and the mouthfeel of the beer, but those mineral salts will also enhance certain flavours in the beer. So hops in particular are enhanced by the mineral salts in the water. Then we've got our malt, so our malted barley or our cereals, whatever you're using, that contains starch, which is converted to sugars during the malting process. Those sugars convert to alcohol during fermentation. So alcohol comes from the fact that you've got yeast eating sugar in the brew. And the yeast converts those sugars to alcohol and carbon dioxide. And with ale, you also get flavours. So up to 50% of the flavour of your beer with an ale comes from the yeast. And then we have our hops. Hops, if you think of hops being as herbs and spices in your cooking, you sprinkle a few herbs and spices in, and you get lots of lovely aromatic and botanical flavours and some spices and big flavours. Hops give aroma, flavour, bitterness, although not all hops are bitter, and they also are a natural preservative. They've got lots of health benefits, thank you, and medicinal benefits as well, hops do. So they're the four basic ingredients of beer. Now, this final beer that we're having is a stout, a chocolate stout, and this is by Big Drop Brewing. You are so good at this. You are. If they bring the... Yes, there's T-shirts and there's the beer mats as well. Big Drop Brewing. Big Drop were one of the first breweries to start brewing really great tasting craft beers, craft-orientated beers. They don't brew any beers with alcohol in, so all their beers are 0.5. And this one is the milk stout. Now, if you're a vegan, you may not want this because it has lactose sugars in it, and lactose sugars are derived from milk. What the lactose does, it adds a sweetness to the beer, but what it also does, very importantly, it gives body. Because when you filter your beer, if you're having a low and no alcohol beer, you're filtering out some of the body of the beer, so you can end up with fairly light-bodied beers. But if you've got lactose, or if you've got oats and rye and other cereals, you can bulk up that body, but lactose is a really useful one for doing that. So we've got a dark beer there. It's a dark stout, and most people know stout as being a dark beer, but you can actually get white stouts and pale stouts. Stout just means big and strong. So in beer terms, it's a big, strong beer that can be strong in flavour or it can be strong in alcohol. So give this one a swirl. You get a I just tried to talk into my glass then. I'm not very good at multitasking, so I was sniffing the mic and talking into the beer. So what you get with a dark stout, and with this beer as well, you get the sweetness there from the lactose, but then under there is this really full-flavoured roasted character. Chocolate, coffee, chicory, roastiness, very moreish, very full-flavoured, got that burnt charcoal finish to it as well. Fantastic beer with desserts, also goes really well with meaty dishes, mushroom dishes, lots of savoury dishes go really well with a stout like that. Cheese, blue cheese, really good with stout. Now, Big Drop have won loads of awards, and this won an award at one of the International Beer Judging Challenge Cups, and they won silver in a class that was full alcohol beers. Now, when you're judging beer, you're actually doing it blind, so you don't know what you're drinking. So the judges of that class were judging porters at maybe 6 or 7%, imperial stouts at 10%, whatever, and that one's silver. So that says a lot about how brilliant this beer is. Delicious. Would you like to say anything, Laura?
If anyone's got any questions now, would be also a good time to ask. We've got some of the brewers here today, so I'm sure they'll be able to answer some questions as well.
Any questions or comments you'd like to make? No, but I can tell you them afterwards if you want, a list of what we tried. Yes, in fact, do you want me to just go through? I'll just go through slowly what we've drunk already. So if any of you want to make notes. So we started off with St. Peter's. That's the name of the brewery, St. Peter's Brewery. And the brand name for their non-alcohol is Without. And this one is Gold. They also do one original, which is even maltier than that one. So Without Gold. So St. Peter's Without Gold. That makes me want to sing a song as well. Every time I have a microphone, by the way, I just want to do karaoke. So second, Debbie, is Adnams. And this one is Ghost Ship. And it's 0.5 alcohol. Now, to put that into context, bananas. So a ripe banana is what, about 0.3. So I think 2 ripe bananas, and you've had more alcohol than you have in that.
It's worth knowing that if somebody's driving, these are all good, so you can drink them all evening and still drive. It won't affect your blood alcohol levels. Also safe if you're pregnant. Around the same as a ginger beer, but a ginger beer is in a different drink category, so it doesn't have to put its ABV on. So it's a complicated issue at the minute, but just to put that into context.
And mouthwash. If you have dental mouthwash in the morning, it can be 20% alcohol or more, can't it? Do you? Fever Tree, one of the sponsors of today, of course. Nuts. These are peanuts, and they're made with, they're flavoured with Ghost Ship. They're from Mr. Filbert's, which is just down there. Fantastic nuts. Don't know if you've been down. Absolutely amazing. She gave me this packet. She said, don't share them.
Not to share Mr. Filbert's nuts.
No, not
very unliberal of them.
I know. So I'm not sharing them, I'm afraid. You can look, but don't touch. Mr. Filbert's nuts, flavoured with, and they do actually taste of Ghost Ship as well. They've got a really lovely lemony character to them. Next one is the beer that I always call the wrong name, and it's a ship full of IPA. A ship full of IPA. It's by Brutal Brewery, and that's a Swedish brewery just about to launch this beer into the UK. And the brand representative, Steve, is here, and lovely Imogen PR as well. So if you want to come and talk to either of them about stocking this beer, or if you want to know more. So that's the IPA. And then our final beer is the Milk Stout from Big Drop Brewing. Now, so most of these drinks, apart from the Brutal Brewing, the ship full of IPA, are available in supermarkets, actually. They all have listings in Tesco, Morrison's, I think, have some of them. There are some other amazing no-alcohol beers around. We're just doing 4 today, and we're doing brands that really are supportive of club soda. But there are some fantastic other brands that are also supportive of club soda as well. And so there's a lot to explore in beer. really is.
Any questions? Any questions, anybody? It's all deathly quiet. If any of you own a pub or a restaurant and are about to get some of these in, so I know that there's a contingency from Wales here. You're going to get like 5 on this guide, aren't you? That's your aim. But if you have a venue or a chain of pubs, we really want to get you on our guide for mindful drinkers. So come and see us if that's something that you're interested in. And so that we can celebrate the fact that you've got great options for drivers, for pregnant women, for anyone who's drinking more mindfully or coming in at lunchtime to your venue. Just to let you know that. And we've got some big drop freebies that are here. They're also on a stand at the back as well. And Stephen from Proof Drinks is here. Do you want to just wave, Stephen? So if you want to find out about the ship full of IPA. Rob is at the back from Big Drop. So if you want to talk about getting Big Drop stocked. Where's Adnams gone? Tom from Adnams is somewhere, but luckily he's got a really big blue jacket on that says Adnams across the back, so you can see him. And if anyone wants to know a little bit more about St. Peter's, you can ask me as well. So do go and ask those brewers. They've put a lot of love and commitment and effort into creating some amazing beers that mean that suddenly this category's transformed, and that those of us, I mean, I didn't even drink beer when I was drinking, so I've only ever drunk alcohol-free beer. So, you know, there's a whole new market out there for you guys of people who will drink these. So come and ask us any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you for coming by. I hope you've learned something today and maybe change your mind about what alcohol-free and low-alcohol beer can be. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the show and maybe see you in a pub sometime, if not at Pub19.